And now, another exclusive interview on STF Underground.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to welcome to the show. He is a guy that is known as the hardcore legend. You know him. Everybody knows him. He is Mick Foley. Mick, how are you?
Thank you. Just so you know, the hardcore legend was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because I gave myself that nickname before I was actually legendary in status, and it caught on.
Well, you definitely were able to live up to that status. So
I guess the lesson is if you want to be a legend, just start calling yourself one.
You know, I want to start off by telling you, my wife and I, we were able to catch the movie you were recently featured in, the Peanut Butter Falcon, last week. We loved it. She actually didn't know you were in it. I kept it as a surprise for her, and she kind of marked out when she saw you in it, so it was a really great treat for her. What was your experience like with that, and what were your thoughts of the movie overall?
Yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, even before I saw it, it was a really positive experience, and you kind of, I thought it looked like a beautiful film. Like I could see it in the on the monitor, and I was, man, this is really beautifully shot. Even during a rain delay, I was looking at the ring and just the way it was shot. Man, this is gorgeous. But you don't know how it's going to come out. I thought it was a really great script, and this is funny because I mentioned this yesterday when I was doing my show for StarCast. But I thought the big problem with the script is that there was no way anyone could make you believe that there would be a wrestler out there who would prioritize looking good in front of 30 people in a backyard instead of allowing a young man with Down syndrome to live out a dream. And even while I was watching Jake Roberts do it, I was thinking to myself, he's doing it. Like, he's doing it. Jake will make you believe and the evil that lives within men. Like, he was really good. Zach Gottsagen was so good in it. Shia LaBeouf had been arrested just a couple days before I got there on set, but he was such a hard worker. He was so gracious. He was so good with all the extras. Sit around and talk to them and take questions during his lunch break. And I was really happy with the way the wrestling transpired
in your backyard,
Jacob's Inferno. And I was really glad, like, when I watched it, and I'm not saying I was a big part of the movie, but I could see little parts from Thomas Hayden Church's dialogue that I helped him with, some lines that I rewrote for him, to some of the wrestling action that I helped out the guys with. One in particular, the script called for a guy to be hit in the face with a barbed wire bat. And I talked to Tyler, one of the directors, like, Tyler, you go with the barbed wire bat to the face, you look like it's one human being trying to kill another. Whereas if you were to use a chair, it's two guys getting a little too into a cooperative act. And he was like, you think so? I was like, trust me, you want to suspend disbelief to where the fans now watching the movie believe there are people out there who would do that to each other. Yep. They will believe that two guys would willingly inflict one type of damage to each other, but not the barbed wire bat to the face. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah, trust me. And so when I saw it in a movie theater with maybe 20 people on a midday, nobody knew who I was or even I was in it. And that chair shot comes in and the guy's teeth come out. And you get the feeling that people are like, oh, I'm surprised that there are people who would be willing to do this to each other, but I believe there are people who would be willing to do that to each other. So I thought it was just a really, notwithstanding my small part, I thought it was a beautiful film with great performances, and I'm so glad to see it's getting 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, 98% for moviegoers, and a great experience.
I loved you in it. Hopefully you win Best Supporting Actor, right?
One of the other things was cool is I knew when they were filming it, they wanted to get the camera shot with the missing ear. And it's front and center. It's really prominent. And to hear someone in the crowd go, what happened to his ear? Pretty satisfying.
Well, are we going to look to see any other films in your future?
I shot one with David Arquette a few months ago, and again, it certainly felt good. Chloe Farnsworth was the actress that I did my scene with, and she was dynamite. Like, she seems to have that it factor, and I think it's going to be Alicia. Hey, Alicia.
Alicia, too, everybody.
She's sticking her head in the crazy.
Sorry.
You know where you are? Come on over here.
Alicia Toot Bombay over here.
Hi. Hello.
The first Rocky, there's that great scene in the meat house where Rocky's training, with the rack of ribs.
Yep.
And then Burt Young, as Paulie keeps sticking his head in the shot. Like, hey, the meat guy keeps sticking his head in. So you are
I'm that
our
guy.
Paulie. Yeah. I think I don't think it was any action. I think you're a little envious as the interview queen.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was.
I feel in a way you feel like I am not being loyal to you.
Oh.
We're going to have Alicia part 2 on our show soon because she's been well missed. She was on one of the first episodes for us.
That I was, and it was a really great interview. And it was great to see how you guys have blossomed. You have a legend on now, so I'm gonna let you do your thing.
You were the first legend that I had on for the record. So.
Oh, I try.
There you go,
Well,
Alicia.
enjoy your interview, guys.
You were on a bus trip here, right?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was crazy. I was working with Wrestling Travel. They brought me out to StarCast, and we had Filthy Tom Lawler on there. Fat Ass Massa was on there.
I haven't even
It's
seen
crazy.
Filthy Tom Lawler. Is he here?
He was just back here. He was, yeah. Brian Pillman Jr. was on the bus. It was a crazy, crazy time. Yeah.
Sounds good.
A lot of fun.
I got one of my big breaks on a wrestling fan tour bus.
Okay.
Then went to not StarCast, Great American Bash in Baltimore in 1991.
Okay.
And I'd had a 6-month run in WCW, pretty good little middle of the card run. And I was, looking to get my foot back in the door. And had I not gone for that, on that trip, and then not been on that bus, I wouldn't have gotten a chance to talk to Dusty after that show, and I wouldn't have been in his back of his head, and maybe that hiring would not have come along. That changed my, changed my whole career.
This is why it's the best interviewing Mick, because he always has the best stories ever.
Fantastic stories.
I'm always convinced I have nothing to talk about. That's why I said to you guys, I got nothing to talk about. I've said everything I can possibly say, and then...
Well, so here's the thing. I feel like most people are going to ask you throughout the years, the Hell in a Cell match and stuff like that. That's probably the question you get all the time. What I want to know... what I want to know, if a fan was to take a look at you, and if you were to recommend any other 3 matches, Mick Foley, not Hell in a Cell, what would you recommend? For me, one of my favorite ones was you and Shawn Michaels in Mind Games. That was one of my favorites.
That was a great, that one and the one with Randy Orton, Backlash 2004. I was really happy to hear Shawn talk so fondly of our match, with the understanding that it showed a different side of him, and that as amazing as he was, and I think there's a good argument that he is the best ever, a good argument can be made, at least in the modern era. I think I can make that argument, that he felt like it added something to his character. And so for that reason, and because it was probably the best I had ever been as far as, personal effort, Randy Orton, I thought that match did a lot for him, and was my personal favorite. And if I had to pick one more, the Sting match, called a Submit or Surrender match, because you will see me do a feat of strength that made me wonder if I had just seen what I thought I saw. Sting was a big guy, like 260, right? He was coming off the second turnbuckle, and I caught him in midair, spun him around, and dropped him over the top rope with an Eddie Gilbert hot shot. And I was like, where did I get the audacity to even think I could do that? And then let alone, I would think 9 times out of 10, it would have knocked me over, I would have stumbled, or certainly wouldn't have had the, physical wherewithal to turn it into a good-looking move. But that was one that is probably not seen too often. I think it's on the network. Mick Foley, Cactus Jack and Sting. Yeah, good stuff.
So clearly you've had an iconic career. spanning 3-time WWF champion. But I feel like arguably you're almost just as well known to be as the hardcore champion and bringing that into fruition. Recently, you were able to bring a new belt into fruition, the 24/7 championship, and brought that kind of into the fray. What are your thoughts on that, the way it's been on TV and the way that it's kind of been used so far?
It's the greatest title in the history of wrestling. The most physically attractive title, period. Yeah, I think I knew, I talked about it a little yesterday. I could feel the oxygen just leaving the room when it wasn't the hardcore title. But I think I was asked about it a day or two later. I was like, give it time, man. People are going to come around. And I said specifically it's going to put some guys in the mix who aren't in the mix right now. And I think that's what's happened. And it's, given a nice resurgence to R-Truth. And we've seen Drake Maverick. Drake's doing great stuff. And here's how you can tell it's working. When you've got the grizzled old-timers. In this case, it was me and Jerry Lawler with Nick Frost, who played Paige's mom in Fighting With My Family, and he's tremendous in that role. And we're backstage at a comic convention talking about the 24/7 title. And Lawler's saying, "Hey, maybe I could win it in my restaurant, run across the street, defend it at the in the ring." And I'm thinking I could come out. So when you got guys now talking about truth and Drake Maverick, I think you've accomplished something. So I think it's a fun part of the show, and I think it works other forms of media in a way that the other title belts don't. Maybe maybe you shouldn't win the WWE title or Universal title at someone's wedding, but you can win the 24/7 title at someone's wedding.
So, you've had a legendary career, obviously, and most people would say you made your name a worldwide name in the WWF, but overall, I feel like your name was really started to be a household name in a small little company called ECW. Recently, there's been another company that has kind of had that groundswell of support and the fan kind of guerrilla feel that ECW had in AEW. What are your thoughts on the company, and do you feel like you maybe support it a little bit because of that resemblance to ECW back then?
Well, for the record, WWE is going to crush AEW, for the record. Let me just say it. Vince, okay, I'm with you. But I think that I think that a really strong AEW only helps WWE, brings out the best in everybody, and I think that's part of what made the Attitude Era so special. People working for that common cause, and we were really fortunate. We had 5 or 6 guys all hitting their strides simultaneously. But it's going to force WWE's hand to be the best they can be. AEW put on a tremendous show last night. I was so impressed with the way StarCast was run. I really enjoyed that. And I think anything that gives the guys and the women another place to work and make a living is good for everybody.
You talked about the guys hitting their strides. You were obviously one of them in that time. And I feel like overall you're one of the legends that after retiring that have just been universally respected by the fans. And I feel like a lot of it is because you tend to echo what a lot of the fans feel, whether it's like or dislike of the product at a certain time. What do you think has kept your finger on the pulse to be so aligned with what the fans feel?
I just read what people are saying and say the exact same thing. No, I mean, I've gone to bat for causes that were not popular, like John Cena and Roman. Sometimes people are like, what, do they actively hate me for having an opinion? But yeah, I by and large, I do think I sometimes, occasionally, call out things that I don't think are working well. Not so much now that my son works for creative. I think that he should be given the freedom to, to work. And then I also wanted to step back after I'd been the GM, and as ceremonial as the position is, it's also legitimate in the sense that you have a say. And so I wanted the new regime to come in and not have my my feedback following them. But and honestly, I don't watch as much of any of the products as I used to, but I do catch things, and I make it a point. Like I saw Tessa Blanchard, and I wanted to specifically say how impressive she was with her mannerisms and her character and how far she'd come, and that there's a huge difference between just being able to do the moves and be able to get people completely immersed in the match you are experiencing with them. So I make it a point to go and tell people things that I think are positive, and once in a while, if I have something that I think can help them and it's constructive criticism, I'll offer that too.
A lot of the older generation tends to not like the product that's on TV today. They feel like it's too many high spots, too many flips, things like that. Do you echo that, or are there certain things that you see right now that maybe aren't conducive to the storytelling, or how do you feel about that right now?
Well, I think there's a time and a place for everything. Mixing up styles is really important. I think from what I saw, I didn't see all of the show last night. I think they did a really good job of that. But I tend to be a fan. I accept that things have to change, that they're forced to change. If we were in the same, if we'd been putting out the same exact product without acknowledging that there was an MMA, that we would have been eaten up alive. We meaning sports entertainment, professional wrestling. And so we have to do things that they can't do. But also I think the key is to do those things that they can't do in an atmosphere where people can still suspend disbelief. So there's no textbook. If there was, anyone could do it. It's always a learning experience. I told Frank Murr one of the most important characteristics you can have is the ability to filter everything you take in and then use what works for you, and understand that you don't know where the advice that might help you turn that switch will come from, and so you listen to everybody, and you filter it through and see what works for you.
Speaking of the old generation and everything like that, you've recently kind of gone old school and cut the cord and gotten rid of a cell phone and kind of almost gone back to the Stone Age with that. What made you make that decision, and how has it been since you were able to cut that cord?
Yeah, well, there were some pains. I went cold turkey. I didn't go to a flip phone. I didn't wean myself. Yeah, so it was difficult, but honestly, like above and beyond it, just being beholden to it and being reachable 24/7. Something should be 24/7, like a pale green title belt. I shouldn't be reachable 24/7. And on a more serious note, I was looking at it too much when I drove, and I thought, this is not a right, it's you have to treat that thing with respect. And I thought, hey man, I might be a danger to myself and others, and so until I could learn to use it with respect, I think it was wise to take it out of my hands.
One last question for you. We talked. No, I think that's fantastic.
It's bringing it around to wrestling. Did you have a question?
I was going to ask if you still have the same minivan.
No, but I replaced it with an exact replica. But no, I replaced it with an updated version. Again, I loved that van, but it started becoming a danger. And it honestly was becoming way more expensive to keep it on the road than it would have been to lease a new one. And so I do have a minivan still, and it looks curiously like the other one. It's Old Russ 2.0. It's going really good. But here's going back to a wrestling vantage point on the phone. I was a little hurt at first that no one from WWE had reached out to me to participate in anything WrestleMania oriented or related. And then I was like, I think there's a better chance that they tried and were unable to reach me and that nobody reached out at all. But I've got a couple events I'm doing for WWE, a couple things I'm doing on the business side. I don't know if there's a spoiler alert, but I'm going to do a guest role on the Big Show, and that door is I think always open to doing things in the future.
Well, and I saw that you were also booked, unofficially announced, for the October 4th show for the SmackDown Live 20th anniversary, the premiere of SmackDown on Fox. Any idea on what you're doing on that show yet?
No idea. No idea. I was, I guess, lucky that I played a pretty pivotal role in the reunion show. I was really I thought I was like starring in my own monster movie. I don't know what they have in store, but I'm happy to do it. I was much more closely related to the Raw show, but SmackDown moving to Fox on Fridays, so I'm happy to be asked to do it and be part of it.
Well, speaking of that horror movie, and just as my last question, Bray Wyatt, he's clearly been doing a lot of really great things, taking it to that dark place that you've been known to take in your past. What are your thoughts on that? How did he come across, being able to use the mandible claw? Did he need to ask you for permission for that?
No one needs to ask me. I'll just say I was flattered, and I'm reading between the lines because I understand, social media is in character. But when he said thank you, I took that to heart. From what I've understood, I may have played a role in his evolution. You see things that you want to do. You see things that you like when you're a fan, and you want to emulate them. Either that, or he's just paying me back for turning on Captain Mike Rotundo in 1990. I don't know. One or the other. Mike was my tag team partner. We lost the Dynamic Dudes. Next thing you know, I'm dropping an elbow on him.
He deserved it.
One thing I'll put this out there is I like the fact that The Fiend he takes you on an emotional journey. And I like the fact he's like almost metamorphosizing before our eyes, even without the mask, when he turns from that, very soothing and enthusiastic host of the Firefly Funhouse, and a minute and a half later, you're just like, I think I'm scared of this guy,
Yeah, my wife can't watch it. She gets freaked out.
It's cool stuff, and WWE's top-notch with the way they edit those packages together, and I really like it. I like the fact that instead of coasting on what he'd created, he went out and created something different, and if you've got like the grizzled veterans, hanging on your every word and wanting to see you again, then you're really accomplishing something.
Well, Mick, I definitely appreciate your time, hanging out with us today. Now that people can't call you, where can people follow you? And, maybe on social media, where can they follow you to?
I keep it real. So Real Mick Foley is the website. At Real Mick Foley is Twitter. At Facebook.com, Real Mick Foley is Facebook. And I did bail out after 2 Instagram posts. But if they want to check those 2 posts out, at Real Mick Foley.
And hopefully PayPal can still DM you sometime soon.
Who can?
PayPal, right? They were hoping.
Oh, yeah, they did get back to me, yeah. That's one of the frustrating things when you have to prove your identity and they're like, would you like a text or a phone call? And they don't give you an option for I don't have the ability to do either. But I think we're going to work it out. I think when I go home and have a landline, I'll be able to figure that out.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you very much again, sir. I appreciate your time.
Have a nice day. Now let me prepare to confront a clown.
Thanks for listening to STF Underground. Like what you heard? New episodes drop every week. If you want more content, follow us on Facebook at STF Underground Podcast or on Twitter and Instagram at STF Underground.